Hey guys, welcome back to Books, Banter, and Beyond. Today's show is really fun. Not only are we going to be talking about an epic fantasy series, we're going to be having a little food along with it. Let's explain. Good day, everybody. My name is Rob. This is my mom, Karen. And as mentioned, you are watching Books, Banter, and Beyond. This series is for the Next Chapter Bookstore, where we dive deep into all things literature related. So today, we're going to have a little bit of extra fun. You guys have probably watched YouTube where people try to eat like fiction. We're going to do a little of that today as well. But beforehand, let's go over our question of the day. So, J.R.R. Tolkien, everybody knows his name. Obviously, still one of the biggest fantasy writers out there. And of course, you won't have Tolkien without his Lord of the Rings and Hobbit series. So the question that you and I decided is, does the use of food in his work show relevance to real life along with his story? Now, a lot of people, I've talked to people about this and they go, well, there's always food and stuff, right? Well, there's a difference between using food and actually having it signify a purpose. And a question that we were talking about last week, because we were talking about, should we talk about the flavors and stuff like that? It's very interesting how a man like him, who I think was in World War II, he lived through a bunch of these big things, he really took England and brought it into his story. And one of the biggest things in English culture is their food, right? Tea time or their meals, right? So in his intricate tapestry of what we call Middle Earth, that's where all of the hobbits and the dwarves live, we see that there's, epic quests and dark forces. But there's one significant element, the humble meal. And it's funny because it's like, it's food, right? What's such a big deal? But in his terms, food really makes the character, not just the character, right?
Right.
So just a quick one to you fast before we jump in, books that you've read, do you ever notice that when somebody's eating food, does it make a difference, or is it just kind of like they're having a sandwich?
No, I think not always, right? Not always. Not all authors do a good job of it, right? But sometimes, yes, and I think it just gives you the full experience. I look at it as more the experience. So the book is not just about the story; it's the experience around the story. So if they're eating, that's part of the experience, and if more the better, right? If you can actually include whatever the foods are for that particular time period or place. So yes, I absolutely think that the food's important.
And I love it. And I definitely can say if I'm reading a regular book and somebody's just kind of having lunch, it's not really a big deal. It's like, okay, that's great. They're just going about their day, they're having lunch, whatever. But there's three aspects to Tolkien, from my perspective, that I think really prove food is more key than others. And the first one, you kind of touch on it, it's hospitality.
Right.
Food in general always means comfort, right? Usually, whether it's culture, whether it's religion, whatever, food has a tendency to mean something significant. And one of the biggest deals that we see, more so in, say his Hobbit story, is that when they all come around to feast, everybody's there. The entire town comes. And I think even in some of the sections in the book, he literally has 3 pages of just all of the food that Bilbo Baggins put out for his friends, because that's how significant it was. It wasn't so much that it was a big deal. In Hobbits usually ate things like breads and baked goods, maybe some like meat pies, which is basically like chicken pot pie. But it wasn't so much that it was the food had to be fancy. It was the fact that everybody came and literally actually sat and ate, right?
It's community gathering, right? It was the community gathering. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard the expression, we're going to break bread together, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so when you break bread together, it's a whole different experience. And I'm back to that word again, but you don't break bread with people you don't know. And once you break bread, you know them.
And he does make a very good point of course, the different caste systems as well. So for instance, the dwarves, kind of little throw together some food versus when you go to the castle of Rivendell, it's a very intricate feast. You have, ham and you have lamb and you have all of this stuff put out,
Right.
the tablecloth. Everybody is dressed to the nines because
Right.
it's a very fancy get together. So no matter what the hospitality is, at the end of the day, it's a bunch of people who are family, basically, even if they're not related, coming together to either, revel in the, hey, we won, or just, hey, we're about to go on this adventure. Let's get our sustenance in.
Right.
So we're
Right.
ready to fight. We're ready to, do what we got to do.
Right.
And that takes us to the second one, character development. And again, people go, well, why is it what they eat shows their character? But really, it does. The best character, I think, and we all know him, Gollum from the movies, the kind of the crazy little creature guy. His obsessive craving for the fish that he eats, the fact that he rips at it, the fact that he grabs at it. It's not so much that he's doing so, but it gives you the characteristic of him. He's a very, very possessive, compulsive character. He's, mine. This is mine.
Mine. Right. Right.
Exactly. Versus, let's say, Frodo or all those guys who are, their purpose is to, they dig up the food, they cook it, and they're like, hey guys, come on over. I'm going to serve you all. This is my gift to you for doing so. So in doing that, Tolkien really gives you a better idea of the character. He could have easily just said, hey, this guy is strong. This guy's good with a sword. This guy can do whatever. And that would be fine. But that's what every book does, right? Most every character
Right.
is that. He takes it a step further and goes, hey, you see how this guy is preparing his meal? You see how this guy is eating his food?
Part of his personality. It's part of who he is. I love that.
Exactly. So it really gives you a character development, and you can see it grow throughout the books. And of course, there are the movies, but throughout everything, you see how the character grows. And then lastly, the symbolism and the narrative. Obviously, when you think of food, there's always a symbol. And you brought up the breaking bread. It's a symbol for coming together. So, for
Right.
instance, usually when you eat something like bread, something like a baked good, it signifies, togetherness, right? When you are eating something like fish or let's say a meat, it usually signifies kind of power, right? Because it's a meat dish. It gives you the strength. So Tolkien literally, and a lot of people will, I've talked to, will say, I don't like too much description. I don't want all this stuff. But Tolkien, for some whatever reason, people don't say that about him. People actually will bypass the fact that he'll write 5 pages of what seems to be nothing,
Right.
and they go, "Wow, this is amazing stuff."
Character expansion. Do you think that the movie took all that 5 pages of the way he
Well,
ate?
it's funny because, for instance, The Hobbit, which is the smallest book, was actually broken into 3 movies. Why? Well, many reasons, but I think the problem I have, and I think we've talked about this off screen, is it's a lot more visual than it maybe needs to be. And again, because you have a movie over a book, you do lose the words. And I understand how a director goes, okay, well, I can't give you the book. Let me throw some extra,
Right.
I don't know, color in, some dragons, whatever it is, to keep you occupied. So to answer it, the movies do it well, but at the same time, they kind of overdo it. But I believe they maybe overdo it on purpose because that's how a movie works versus a
Well,
book.
right. When you're reading a book, it's your own imagination as you
Right.
are reading it. What does it look like to you in your head? And a movie is saying, this is what it looks like, rather
Exactly. So,
than,
I mean, and again, the narrative device to keep the story going,
yeah,
it's 2 very different, obviously,
right,
birds there. But symbolism is the same. When you see it or when you read it, and you see them sitting down and diving into their pie or diving into their whatever, the symbolism is there both ways. And I think those 3 things are what make it. And I hope that those watching that maybe go, well, food is food, maybe kind of get a different idea.
right,
And if you haven't yet read all of his stories through, go through, check them out
right,
because you're going to get a different viewpoint of what food means. And who knows, maybe down the line, we're going to find other stories that maybe
right,
do the same
right,
thing.
right. I'm getting hungry.
Well, it's good that you say that, and I know you have your tea. So we decided, are we going to eat first breakfast? So for those of you who don't know, hobbits like to eat. Hobbits will have multiple breakfasts, multiple lunch, and multiple dinners for the purpose of sustenance. a hobbit's job, an elf's job, a dwarf's job is to work and to fight, right? And what do you have to do that? You have to have your sustenance.
Right.
So first breakfast is probably the simplest one. Now, we chose it to be muffins and tea, but generally it's a baked good, it's a bread, it's some sort of drink and small food, because first breakfast is what you do right before you go out to kind of till and grow and plant. You're not going out for the big full thing yet, so you don't need a big meal, right? But you need just enough sustenance
To get you
to,
going.
right. So I chose, if you guys can see, my blueberry muffin heated up in the microwave a little bit because it's so tasty.
Yum, yum.
But and again, and I'll throw it to you for a second while I dive in. Tea versus coffee. If you're taking to the real world, do you think there's a better sustenance, or do you think it's kind of to each their own?
I think it's to each their own, because I could probably make an argument for coffee right now and say every morning I have my cappuccino, and that's my sustenance. Interestingly, that's how I start my day, right? But for the rest of the day, I drink tea. So I could make an argument for both at this point, but I think tea seems a little more refined to me. And coffee is like the worker, the hard worker to get you going in the morning. So tea,
So
cheers.
I think because he's from England and he grew up with all that, I would go for the tea in this case, because I feel like over there, tea in general is a much bigger deal.
Right.
They prefer. I prefer it cold, which apparently is very insensitive to some people because they're like
Me
tea
too.
has to be hot.
No, I like it.
But they have a big deal over there. Different flavors, different styles of tea. So I would go with the tea personally. And again, my choice is green. I love green tea. It gives you the energy. It gives you the antioxidants to kind of go
Right.
through. I'm gonna take a sip really quick.
Yeah, I like black tea. Simple, no sugar, no lemon, no nada. So we have some pictures, or actually a picture of the series of books. I just want to put it up here. You have these in the bookstore.
Yeah, and we'll go over what we got. It's a really cool series. It's the Del Rey version, so it's a little bit more condensed, but it's a really good read. This particular version.
And we're going to show you guys later on, but you can buy all four if you want, or you can buy them one at a time as well. Muffin good?
Muffin is delicious, and I know you wrote down a couple of questions to quiz me on and see if I actually
Yep.
know my things.
I
Um,
do. I do. All right. So, question number one. How does the depiction of the feasts and meals contribute to world building in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings?
Excuse me. So, great question here, because the last episode we did, we talked about universe building in Star Wars. World building is basically a little bit less condensed. It's more specifically, we're going to give you the map of where you are. And I think the food portrays that very well here. Like we mentioned earlier, one of the things that it shows you is who you are, where you are, and what you are on the line. If you are a king, a prince, an elf for that matter,
Right?
usually have more money for better food. On the flip side, if you are a hobbit or a dwarf that kind of lives off the land, not to say the food is any worse, but you usually have more simple things, like let's say muffin, like let's say breads.
Right.
So I think in a way what he uses his food here for is to, again, give you the characters, right? It
Right.
gives you a world of who you are based on what you eat, which is kind of cool.
It's part of the caste system again. So he's identifying every single thing that happens in a hobbit's life, the food they eat versus the kings, the food they eat. I love this. I love the way this is what you're really good at, Rob. You're able to dissect all of this, because I would just read the book and say, nice book. So, all right, I have another question for you. What is the cultural significance, or what cultural significance do different food items hold for the various races in Middle Earth?
So I think the cultural significance here comes into real life. And I know you and I like to discuss how these things connect to the real world. So I think culturally, and again, I didn't know the guy, I didn't grow up in the World War II era, but what it seems to be from what I've read about him is he used what he knew. So being that he was a soldier in war, the kind of rations he ate versus what he ate when he went back home, I think he kind of compared, let's say, a soldier to a bystander at home. the people who weren't fighting usually were kind of, rich. They were, they didn't have to go off to war. They had their whatever. So
Hmm.
they were at home eating, the ham, the meat, all the
Right,
good stuff,
right,
basically.
right, right,
Versus somebody who was on the battlefield probably was eating more, the dried food, the repurposed
right.
stuff like that. So I think personally, the cultural significance here is he's comparing Middle Earth to what the country was at the time,
Hmm.
back when he was out doing his thing. And again, it's, I guess, sad but true. But I think it also made his work so much better because he was able to live it. I think.
Right. No, I think he did. I think he does a really, really good job with that, especially tying in, everything about the food. I mean, now that you point this out, I think all of our viewers are going to start looking at their books and the things that they read maybe a little differently, right? It's to say,
Yeah.
okay, it's not just a story, it's a story that has all these components. So yes, he does a really good job. So how does Tolkien use food as a means of conveying character traits or societal norms?
Huh. So I was thinking about this one too, and I think it's kind of, twofold. I think as far as the norms go, obviously everybody's got to eat, everybody needs sustenance to work. But I think it, again, like we said, it definitely pulls the story through. I think in this case, and I usually don't like to use the movie, but I think if anybody's seen them, you'll notice a lot of times they're always munching on something as they go. So
Right,
whether it's Frodo with a snack or somebody, they're always eating something, and I think it has more significance than you might think, other than just seeing them do it. So I think again, it gives you it in case you forgot who they were or what they were. He's continues to remind you, hey, by the way, yeah, these guys are growing and these guys are becoming bigger characters, but don't forget they're still holding on to their roots of their
right.
character, of their culture. So no matter how strong Frodo gets, no matter how strong any of those guys get,
Hmm.
he's always going to be a hobbit. He's always going to do what hobbits do. And I think Tolkien tries very hard to make sure you don't forget that because he doesn't want you to lose sight of
Who you are. And,
exactly,
right.
exactly.
And if you want to like take this to modern times, I would think it's the same kind of thing. We should never lose sight as individuals of who we are, right? And I think
Right.
that's a pretty profound statement right there.
Yeah, and I think again, it's just one of the things that makes him, a very good author. Very long books, I get it. Not a lot of people want to read the long books, but again, as far as an epic fantasy, this guy definitely is still up there, even in 2024. So he's doing something right.
He's doing something right. So, guys, if you're one of the very few people, or you have already read this book, if you have not read any of these books, we're going to give you an opportunity right now to pick them up. I mean, great prices: The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, nine
And I'll
dollars.
show you guys some of these covers while you do.
Yep.
So
And you know what to do? Take your phone out and scan that, and it will take you right to the book. The second book I want to show you is Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Again, $9. I mean, it's a great price. Pick it up. The third book we're going to show you is Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King.
I love these pictures, by the way. Whoever drew this is really
They're
like,
beautiful. They're very simplistic and beautiful at the same time. And we also, The Hobbit, the original, The
go
Hobbit.
back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning. So we have all of these books that are sitting there in the bookstore. Make sure you check it out. And I think, do we have any more? Yes, we do. We have some more. Yes.
So for those who maybe want some more epic fantasy, we do have some stuff. So this one I love. So if you ever heard of Brian Jocks, it was turned into a PBS cartoon series at one point as well. But who doesn't love talking animals? So what this series is it's medieval times,
Mhm.
but through the viewpoints of various creatures. So we have mice, rats, badgers, owls, but they fight. They have swords. They have bow and arrow, and they talk obviously. So this is just one of the few. His collection spans so many, but I love talking animals. I think it's if you
Right.
do it well,
Mhm.
it's great. So again, one of the main characters we have Mariel of Redwall, and the series was actually called Redwall on
Okay.
TV. You guys might have heard of that one. But this is one of the few. If you haven't, go check it out. $3, super good price. But I love it. I can't speak enough about it. So
Now this next one is a collector's. It's the
so we got lucky here. So we were scrounging around looking for stuff, and we came off this leather-bound book one of Game of Thrones. And I don't know if you're able to see it clearly, but somebody drew a specialty map only in this version here.
wow.
The author, I think the creator of the map, her name is in here as well. I'll have to find it. But again, the show's over. I think there's a new one, House of the Dragon. That's kind of a prequel. But again, just like Lord of the Rings, this book series, he managed to get people stuck
Right.
forever and ever. So, and I love leatherbound. I mean, I almost don't want to get rid of it because it's that nice of a book.
But you
If you
will.
guys want a collector? I know. I'll be nice. I'll give it. But if you want a collector edition, specialty, $10, super.
Yeah,
expensive.
really, really great price. We also have the Foundation, a novel of Valdemar.
So Mercedes Lackey, a very famous, again, another fantasy writer. If you haven't read her, read her. She's great. Foundation, I'm trying to remember because I think this might be the first one of the series. But again, another epic tale. It's got all your elements that you love. And again, people will see her name and go, "Oh, I remember her," because I think back in the '90s,
Right.
people used to read her all the time. So again, just you
Check it out.
can't tell that I love this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, at the Next Chapter Bookstore shop, you have some amazing books in there, and it's a used bookstore. So for those who are, avid readers and you're looking for something new to read, check out the store. And finally, the last one I want to put up here is The Prince of Blood by Raymond E. Feist.
So again, another super big name. You guys are going to see this name and go, "Oh, I've read this guy too." Again, this guy's kind of like Conan the Barbarian meets like King Arthur. You've got like the dudes that, the big strong guys with the whatever. You have the sword fighting, the magic. But again, I mean, fantasy is probably up there as one of my three favorites genre wise. So I mean, we have Lord of the Rings that we talked about. We got this other stuff.
So I'm gonna put this screen up here, and we can talk as it's up here. These are QR codes. You can find paperbacks and hardbound books at the Next Chapter Bookstore.shop. You can find a big, huge assortment of comic books if you are a comic book fan, and also merchandise. We're going to show you our T-shirts in just a second. We are wearing T-shirts, and Rob's eating, so books, band, beyond, different colors, all sorts of stuff. We have mugs and travel things for ice and for hot. Lots of really, really great stuff. Make sure you check it out. And again, at the Next Chapter Bookstore.shop. Rob, any last thoughts today? This is a great show.
Well, this was super fun. I got to eat. We got to chat. We're going to definitely eat some more food soon.
Yep.
But yeah, as always, check them out. We got a lot of cool stuff, like my mom said. So if these don't strike your fancy, go check out that link. Have a whole slew of amazing books in store.
We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye.